for you. Karen Reed. The Karen Reed trial is the gift that keeps on giving. Now, obviously, rest in peace to John O'Keefe. I'm not excited or happy that this trial even happened. I wish it had never happened because this man not only lost his life, not only did his family lose a son and a brother, but we still don't know who killed John O'Keefe. But when it comes to more information coming out about the corruption surrounding this investigation into Karen Reed, we're finding out more and more and more now. And now we have an update here from Mass Live out there in Boston talking about what could be seen in this federal investigation. There's so much here. It's absolutely crazy. Y'all check this out. This is breaking, just dropped less than 24 hours ago. And they say the Karen Reed federal investigation impacts more cases than previously thought. Could it be Michael Proctor involved in this because of the text messages that came out? Let's see. Norfolk County prosecutors reviewed confidential materials turned over from the federal government's investigation of the Karen Reed case for evidence that could benefit defendants in 19 criminal cases, court records show. It remains unclear if prosecutors distributed the federal materials across all 19 cases, some of which have already gone to trial. In 12 of the 19 cases, prosecutors filed protective orders for federal grand jury materials, suggesting they either had to turn over or plan to share some documents. This is wild. The list of all 19 cases was revealed in a court order filed last week in the Brian Walsh case. Norfolk Superior Court Judge Peter Krupp ordered the federal government not to destroy any materials it turns over to the state prosecutors during the Reed investigation. The order was entered a day before local prosecutors returned the tranche of documents turned over to them back to the feds. We know Proctor's emails, texts, images, voice recordings were all included in that, which is one of the reasons why it's speculated that our guy, Mr. Good, Sergeant Good, can we call Sergeant? I guess he's still a sergeant. Sergeant Good was placed on administrative leave with pay because they got this information and they saw there was some things that didn't look great. State prosecutors first gave notice to the possible return of destruction of the material in July. A federal court order required the district attorney's office to dispose of the material 30 days after the end of the Reed case, which concluded with her acquittal on June 18th. The order was eventually extended to a deadline of October 31st. A series of hearings on the issue were held before Crump, but the hearings only addressed 5 cases, those of Bianca Ciancio, Giovanni Del something. I'm not going to say those because I'm going to ruin the names. We had Sean Johnson, Miles King, we've talked about, and Brian Walsh, we talked about in passing here as well. All but Bianca are charged with murder. And y'all said Judge Corrupt. In the remaining 14 cases, all but 2 defendants are charged with murder. The exact contours of the federal investigation are not known, but multiple witnesses who testified in the Reed trial were summoned to appear before a federal grand jury, including former Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor. It was alleged that some of the Alberts, some of the McCabe's were going to be called as well. I think from what I remember, some of them didn't end up showing up, but it was told they were summoned and said, hey, you might have to come and talk to us. When Proctor, who was fired in March, testified before the federal grand jury, he was asked about the failure to conduct a proper investigation in the Reed case, according to a lawyer representing Brian Walsh. Much of the information lawyers sought to access from the federal investigation concerned Proctor. Shocker. Attorney Rosemary S., because I mess up her name, she's representing Miles King in this, and she actually represents another case as well that involved Proctor. She said that there are 3 different categories of information she and other lawyers sought access to. Those are searches performed on Proctor's work phone, searches on his personal phone, and whatever else the government turned up during its investigation into Karen Reed's case. That's going to be a lot of information. The third category would include a grand jury material. Proctor's role in the 19 cases affected by the federal investigation is unclear. He was the lead investigator in Miles King's case, but played a less prominent role in others like Brian Walsh. Records show the prosecutors sought protective orders for material taken from either Proctor's personal or work phone in all but 2 of the cases, and they're going to be able to see that. In any criminal case, prosecutors have an obligation to disclose any material that could benefit a defendant, including, for example, evidence that harms the credibility of a law enforcement officer, which Michael Proctor doesn't need any help in that area. But prosecutors also turned over material in a case that went to trial and ended in a conviction, so somebody may be getting out of jail. Jack Lew, a retired Superior Court judge, explained that the prosecutors were likely seeking to protect the constitutional rights of the convicted defendant. That makes perfect sense. They are likely enabling the defense for the case that ended in a conviction to consider the true value of what criminal lawyers call Brady material. We've heard this used so many times on this channel. Lew said, referencing the landmark Supreme Court case, established the requirement to turn over information benefiting defendants. We've seen even in the Y&W Melly trial, because there was a Brady issue, there was a mistrial, which is crazy. We saw it even in another trial, AJ Scott, I believe. There was something going on there with the Brady material. They didn't disclose information about where someone was seated in the car. The defense didn't give that to the prosecution. Mistrial. Taken together, the recent disclosures appear to show that Proctor could remain a central figure in many criminal cases, even after being fired from the state police. We talked about this, and this is the first thing that I mentioned when we were covering what happened to Proctor initially and these 13 years worth of emails and iCloud data being brought to light. It's going to be bad. It's going to be so bad. I would see defense lawyers taking Trooper Proctor at a part of every case he is involved in. I'd be shocked if they did not, said Lew, an adjacent family member at Boston College Law and New England Law. Proctor's involvement is like a freebie for defense lawyers. And this is exactly what we said. We talked about this. This is Michael Proctor's worst nightmare. And if he thought he was getting his job back, his career's over. We've got even more about the Karen Reed case. Y'all check this out from Boston 25 when it comes to, again, more information coming out as a result, potentially, of Michael Proctor's data. This is why.
$1 a month in taxpayer money. That's how much the Massachusetts State Police spends to track troopers on the road. The GPS system is supposed to boost transparency and accountability, but 25 Investigates found it can be defeated with the flip of a switch. Here's investigative reporter Ted Daniel.
Here we go.
We begin this story with a name you're likely familiar with, Michael Proctor. He's the former state police detective fired for conduct revealed in Karen Reed's first trial. I started looking into state police GPS tracking after learning how Proctor stayed off the radar with his.
Yes, you guys heard this right. Michael Proctor was manipulating police equipment so he wouldn't be tracked. Boston's finest here.
Michael Proctor was fired for his texts about Karen Reed and for what he did on an overtime shift where he was making time and a half.
You also investigated Michael Proctor for this allegation of drinking on duty, correct? I did.
Proctor and Canton Police Detective Kevin Albert drove to the Cape in Proctor's unmarked cruiser. While investigating a cold case, they stopped for cold beers at Treehouse Brewery in Sandwich, and then dinner and more drinks at a restaurant in Hanover on the way home. Proctor's cruiser was equipped with a hardwired GPS tracker. State police began installing the devices in all of their vehicles in 2019. The initial cost, $225,000.
So I believe that this is an important step forward for the department, an important resource for the department.
Then Colonel Christopher Mason touted it as an accountability tool, following the overtime fraud scandal that rocked the agency in 2018.
So we'll now have the ability to track historical time and attendance.
25 Investigates filed a public records request for Proctor's GPS data on the day he went to the Cape with Kevin Albert. If you go by the report, Proctor drove a total of 8 seconds that day and never left his hometown of Canton. The rest of his travels were never recorded. With a flip of a switch, he was able to turn his tracker off.
And fair to say you found no violation or misconduct in that respect.
Correct.
Michael, would you like to make any comment?
Proctor was never disciplined for turning off his vehicle locator because he was authorized to.
You can't shut your radio off, so why would you shut that off?
Dennis Galvin is a retired state police major and president of the Massachusetts Association for Professional Law Enforcement. There are roughly 3,000 state police vehicles with GPS locators on the road. 25 investigates found 418 of them have a kill switch. An agency spokesperson says tracking can only be disabled with a supervisor's permission, and only in sensitive investigations where location data can put people at risk. We asked Galvin about that.
You could wind up disclosing information about critical witnesses or even informants and things like that. And those are things that it would be in the department's interest to make sure that weren't available.
But the switch can be abused. A state police internal affairs report from 2021 says then Trooper Dwayne Correa had his gun stolen out of his unmarked cruiser following a night of drinking in Providence. The report.
Who's work on the movie? Is it going to be Ben Affleck and Matt Damon that are working on this movie? Because this is the wildest thing I've ever heard. What is going on in Boston? What's going on in Massachusetts in general, in Canton, in Norfolk County? I mean, some of these stories you hear are insane. A police officer was drunk, had his issued gun in the car, and it was stolen because he was out drinking.
Report says Correa disabled his tracker to conceal his whereabouts from his supervisors.
I think there's a management obligation here to make sure that there's compliance.
State police denied our request for a list of all the vehicles where tracking can be shut off, calling it detrimental to the security and safety of uniformed members.
Of course.
A state police spokesperson tells me newly appointed Colonel Jeffrey Noble recently increased oversight on the small number of requests to temporarily disable the system to protect the personal safety of troopers, victims, and witnesses.
They said, hey, my bad. My bad, guys. We'll make sure we check that a little bit more often. Hey, Vinny, you got your tracker on? All right, have a good day.
And state police say that GPS data is cross-referenced when reviewing payroll. For 25 Investigates, I'm Ted Daniel.
How is this a real place? This cannot be a real place. I'm going to leave it to y'all. Let me know what you think about this in the comments in the chat. I will put everything I own on the fact that this is not the last time we're going to hear about something as a result of what Michael Proctor had going on